Hi, and welcome to the Alexander Valley Film Festival. This is our 7th annual, and it is an honor to be here today with you for this Q&A in conjunction with the film Keyboard Fantasies, the Beverly Glenn-Copeland story. Before we get started and before I introduce you to our fantastic director, I want to offer a land acknowledgement. Alexander Valley Film Society recognizes that we are on unceded land of the Coast Miwok, Pomo, and Wapo. We respectfully acknowledge the Indigenous people who have lived here for thousands of years and who continue to contribute in meaningful ways to their community and to our society as a whole. Our shared history includes the genocide, forced removal, and ethnic cleansing of Indigenous people. Alexander Valley Film Society is committed to centering Indigenous voices and stories and to recognize the past and celebrate the resiliency of Native people and their culture. Our deepest thanks go to Nikki Myers-Lim and the California Indian Museum and Cultural Center in Santa Rosa, and to Clint McKay from the Pepperwood Preserve for their assistance with this acknowledgement. Please visit our website to learn more. That's avfilmsociety.org/equity. Before we begin, a couple of quick housekeeping items. If you need tech assistance at any point during the festival, you can visit avfilmsociety.org/FAQ for live chat support anytime between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. Please note that we are providing live audio captioning through Zoom. So you can turn captions on by clicking the CC at the bottom of your screen. And we are just going to be here with Posy for about 30 minutes, but if you do have questions about this film, you can put them in the chat window of the Zoom screen. And at the end of our discussion, if time allows, we will take a few questions. There we go. So I am just delighted to be here with Posy today. She is a film director and co-founder of Luca, the production company. And Posy created this film in 2019, and you are from the UK, but you are joining us from Hawaii.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you for taking the time to be with us. It's such a pleasure. Your film is really, really lovely and moving. I'm just so happy to be able to bring it to audiences.
Yeah, it's been a really wonderful thing to kind of have created something that can, I mean, I love the film. It sounds big-headed, but it's more about, for me, it's also about like getting Glenn out to more people, and his music and his art and his philosophy. So it's been a really wonderful experience watching the film travel out there and spread. It's really special.
I can imagine. I would love to start by asking you, a lot of the films that you've made have been music documentaries and music related. Can you talk about how you got into filmmaking and how music has been important to you as a director?
Yeah, I mean, I got into filmmaking. I actually originally was writing when I was younger, and then the internet happened and all of the journalism was going online, and I'm really dyslexic, and I was like, I can't write quick enough to do online journalism. So I started doing some film work with Vice, like right when they started making documentaries back in the old days. And then yeah, just kind of fell in love with film as a medium to kind of, I guess I still come at a lot of my work from a journalistic point of view. Like I love the way in which, as a filmmaker, especially in documentary, you get to learn so much, and you're constantly surrounding yourself with people who are experts in a field, or artists that are incredible in a field, these kind of like people at the top of their game, or who have these passionate interests that you then get to be privy to. So that's always been the attraction to me. And I've been, I'm sure like most people in the world, an avid music listener my whole life. So music has always been one of the strands of the filmmaking that has been part of the landscape that I've been working in from the get-go.
Can you tell me, on that note, how you first came to hear Glenn's music, and at what point, Like, what caused you to realize that you wanted to make a film about him?
Yeah, I mean, it was very, the whole thing happened, terrible word, but it happened very organically. A friend of mine played, I was in the studio that I work in, and someone put Keyboard Fantasies on. This is like 3 years ago or so, 4 years, I don't know, it's a while back before the album was really out there. And I heard it and I had this like very visceral reaction to it. I can like remember the moment, you know, just sitting there and being like, wow, what's that voice? Like, who is that? And my friend Jim was like, I so clearly remember it. He was like, oh, that's Beverly Glenn-Copeland. And I was like, who is she? And he's like, I have no idea. So I started digging around on the internet and found my way to Glenn on Facebook and dropped him a message, because at the time I was developing another film project which was about music and the human species, and looking at music as a tool for social cohesion and healing. And I reached out to Glenn and was like, I'd be really interested to talk to you about this project, kind of outline what it was. And he's like, great, honey, let's jump on Skype. And that first time we Skyped for like 2 hours and just talked about music, essentially, a bit about his story as well. But it was just this long, delightful conversation. I remember like coming off Skype, like grinning from ear to ear. And it was dark, you know, it had gone from daylight to dark. And my studio mate, I remember her looking up and being like, she said, that sounded nice. And I was like, that was the best conversation ever. So yeah, we just struck up this friendship on Skype. And I was, after that first call, I was definitely interested in filming with Glenn, but my instinct right at the beginning was that the music of Keyboard Fantasies, it had never been played live at that point, because Glenn had written it on his own on 2 synths. So initially I was just really interested in figuring out a way that we could go and record Glenn playing Keyboard Fantasies now, and just to, for me, just that in itself was my goal. And then yeah, about a year later, I couldn't find anyone to fund it. And about a year later, I got a cancellation fee for a project I was doing that got cancelled. So I just got on a plane and like went to Nova Scotia, very last minute notice, and filmed Glenn performing Keyboard Fantasies with his new band, and did one interview with him. Spent like a week with him, and I think that's when it really, I came back from that trip and I was like, oh, I could I remember being like, make a performance video, like a short film with some performance in it. And then actually looking at the beautiful, beautiful storytelling I had from Glenn, and it was just like, no, this is a bigger project. So that's when we decided to actually make a longer film.
So is all of the footage of his live performances from that 1 week with him, or did you go back and spend more time once you developed it into a longer project?
No, so all of that, so that the project, once we developed it into a longer project, he was actually coming to Europe with the band for this very short tour. So all of the live performances are from that tour in Europe. So the stuff that I shot with him the first time I met him is the interview that's in the first half of the film. And then a few months later, he was coming to Europe for the first time to tour. And then we went on tour with him and the band. And that's when all that live footage that's in the film was all shot. And that's all shot in like a week as well. It was very, you know, we were not self-funding, but I put some money in, then we kickstarted some money, then we won a film fund. So it was very piecemeal, and it was done on an absolute shoestring.
And it does not, you would not know that looking at it. It looks so beautiful and so, it has such high production value, but in like a very soft, kind of understated way. It doesn't look like flashy, but it looks really just really professional and really elegantly made. It really feels like a kind of sound collage through a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very much a result of how many people were so generous with their time and talent on this project. And I think that, you know, there was a few things, like it was my first feature, so I think a lot of the people that I worked with felt that I've worked with in the past were generous with wanting to support me. But I also think that like everybody that meets Glenn or hears his music just falls in love with him, you know. So everyone that got involved with the project was so yeah, so generous with their time and skill, because they all really believed in Glenn and the story and the music. It had this very like community feel in the making of process as well. Everyone was just really invested in it, and I see it as all of our film, like everyone that worked on it. It was a real village effort.
It's really profound, and it's like pretty uncommon still to see a film about a trans person where that's just one of the subject's attributes, and it's not the central focus of the film. And in this documentary, I'm so appreciative that Glenn's gender and transition, as well as Glenn's race and class. He's Black, but he's also someone who grew up with a lot of like economic privilege that his family and ancestors didn't have. All of those things are things that he speaks to in the film, but it's also overall, it's not just a film about those facets of him. It's about him as an artist and him in a much more holistic way. So I'm interested to know how you and him conceived of how you would weave these facets of life and identity into the film.
Yeah, I mean, I feel from the very get-go, when I wrote the kind of structure of the film, which I did after I'd shot the first interview and after I'd been out spending that week with Glenn, where I really felt like, we talked a lot and I learned a lot about his story. From the very get-go, I was always hanging on to music as the kind of the anchor that would anchor this whole film. So all of my decisions as to what went in the film and what didn't go in the film were all based in music and time. It was all about trying to tell Glenn's story through his artistic and musical life and experience, and using the filmmaking process to try and like ground his story in the context of the time, so that the audience could get a better idea of his life experience and like the life experience that has led to who he is today, which is this like incredibly inspirational, special person. So I feel like all of the intersections of Glenn's identity and his story, they come up when they came up through music, if that makes sense. And by having that guide of following Glenn's musical journey, that enabled me to sort of make the decisions about which elements of his story were in the film and when they came up. And the film was always about music, like it was always about music. The film's about that record. Like that's, when I set out to make it, I was like, I'm making a film. I wrote the structure, like the first half of the film was going to be, the kind of the missing story of Glenn's life that a lot of people didn't know or don't know, and I didn't know when I started making it, up until when he wrote Keyboard Fantasies. And then I wanted Keyboard Fantasies to be this like moment, and then we fast forward in time and we're in present day, in the now, like with this intergenerational music experience happening.
That's such a fascinating part of his story and life, and that album, it really feels like he was born 50 years earlier than his peers. Like he is so at home with these 20 something musicians, and he's in his mid 70s.
Yeah. It's incredible. And it's not like he's spent the past 30 years immersed in youth culture. It's not like that had been going on all along. It just, he lives quite an isolated life. He's been living with his wonderful wife Elizabeth for the past, I don't know, like 15 years, or that might not be accurate, but for a long time. But they do live like quite an isolated life, just working and making their art together. So the ease with which Glenn can communicate with and like resonate with all these different communities and generations, I think is reflective of the way his music also has this kind of universality to it. Yeah, it's quite something to behold.
It really is. He has there's a lot of relatability in his story, but it is so singular as well.
Yeah.
I would love to know what you're proudest of about this film, or perhaps coming from this a different angle, if you'd rather respond this way, what responses to the film have been most moving to you?
Oh man, I mean, every response moves me deeply, and I really mean that. I think one thing that happened recently that I just thought was really beautiful was that a professor from McGill University, which is the university that Glenn was at when he was ostracized for being an out lesbian in the 60s. One of the professors from McGill got in touch and asked for a viewing copy of the film because they were going to integrate it into their course that year. I think it was like a political science and history course that they were teaching at the university, and watching Keyboard Fantasies and, you know, talking about Glenn's story had become part of the curriculum there. And I thought that was like, that really moved me in a pretty major way. I was like, wow, that's really like humbling and profound to think that that's happened, you know, like Glenn was at that university in the 1960s and now we're in what, 2021, and his story is being used to teach people, as opposed, you know, by an institution that once ostracized him. So that was pretty cool.
That is what a bittersweet moment to have, from his perspective, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, this literally happened like a couple of days ago, so I haven't even written to Glenn yet to tell him that. But Glenn's Buddhist and has this, which I think comes through in the film, has this incredible like acceptance of all the experiences of life, that it's all part of the tapestry of life, you know, the good stuff, the bad stuff, the painful stuff, the beautiful stuff. It's all stuff and it's all got its place, you know, and it's all part of who we are. So I think that's part of what makes him such a kind of healing person to be around, is this acceptance of the full spectrum of experience in life.
I wanted to ask what it's been like for you with the film, and what it's been like for Glenn as a suddenly touring musician to then, right as this was wrapping, it must have wrapped within months of the pandemic starting, or been released.
Yeah,
So what has that been like to suddenly not be able to like tour and debut with the movie or play music live, and be everyone in their like sort of separate isolations?
yeah. It's just one of those things, isn't it? I think both Glenn and I had our independent, very exciting plans for 2020 that got shut down pretty hard. I feel really lucky. We got to show the film in London and in New York both times with Glenn at the tail end of 2019. And I'm so grateful that I had that chance to show in the cinema before everything got shut down, because I have friends that made their first films that never even got them into the cinema. So I feel like deeply, deeply blessed that we got to have that experience together. And then, you know, like everything else, you just have to, last year's been a shocker, but there's been lots of, I know that Glenn speaks to this as well, that there's been lots of really quality communication and interaction online through these digital festivals, and Glenn's been doing digital performances, and you know, there's so many worse things going on in the world for so many people that I feel like in a way it's been kind of fun to have a digital festival thing to distract myself from everything else that's going on, you know. So yeah, an unexpected turn, but it's definitely not the worst thing that could have happened.
It's really nice to hear that, and I mean, it's nice that we're here connecting right now from
Yeah.
thousands of miles apart, and I don't know if that would be happening.
Yeah, I really think so. Because I've made a real effort. The film's had like an incredible festival circuit, and we've made a real effort as a team to like always be there and like always do the Q&As and always connect with these festivals. And I feel like I've connected with so many small festivals that I never would have had it not been for COVID. So it's been really fun.
Can you touch for a minute on, we talked a little bit about the work that you do day to day. Like this was a passion project, clearly, that you were able to bring out into the world. But a lot of the work that you do is with Vogue and is fashion based, and also clearly has a lot of passion in it, but is nonetheless like content that you're being hired to create. So I would love for you to talk about what that's like as a filmmaker and what working in fashion means to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I guess all filmmakers come from different backgrounds, and I'm like self-taught, like I learned on the job. I never went to film school or anything, and I've always functioned in a way that I've always had like filmmaking work that I get paid for, which has been super fascinating. Like it's a lot of documentary work. Like I'm so lucky I get paid to do what I love, but I think that because of finances, like the fashion industry has a lot of budget to make work, so a lot of the work that I get commissioned to make is fashion centric documentary, which I've really fallen in admiration and in love with. Like I never would have said that fashion was a passion point for me personally, but over the years of working within it, I've really started to appreciate it as this universal art form that touches all of our lives and is actually like deeply stigmatized, because of the fact that it's tied up in commerce, because of the fact it's often connected with the female world, and is not really taken seriously universally in the same way that visual arts and music is. But really, it's something that we're all, it's the fabric of all of our lives, and when you start looking into fashion in a deep way and like paying it the respect that it deserves, it's like a deeply powerful and endlessly fascinating universe.
Absolutely. I think just in watching a few of your films, your fashion work, it's really evident that that fascination comes through, I think, and you've been able to bring um, a lens to it that I think really does celebrate the artistry
Yeah, yeah.
in it.
Well,
So I
thank
just
you.
have one more question for you, but I guess it's a two-parter. I would love to know what is next for Luca and Posy, and then also what is next for Glenn, if you know.
Yeah, well, I know. What do I know about this? I'm working on developing a new film project, which is working with another artist who's got some similar traits to Glenn in that she's just like a very, very, very unique artist. But it's very early days, so I'm working on figuring that one out. But I'm very excited about that project. It's quite scary, but it's exciting. And I'm doing that with Luca and with Liv Proctor, who's the producer that I worked with on Keyboard Fantasies. And then Glenn is, I you'd need to go to Glenn's website and check in on what he's up to. He's doing lots of projects. He's very busy. Keyboard Fantasies, the record, got re-released on a big international record label about a week and a half ago now.
I saw that Robin wrote like an
Yeah,
introduction about the
yeah.
album.
Robin
That's
wrote the
special.
liner notes, and yeah, and so that's just been super exciting to like hear the record being played on the radio, and I'm getting people messaging me from all over the place being like, oh, I heard it today. And so yeah, Glenn's career is just really going from strength to strength, and I know that one thing I love about what's happening with his work is that a lot of younger artists are reaching out to Glenn and asking him to collaborate on projects and to, and I love that, the fact that he's still making new work and he's connecting with a younger generation of artists that want to make work with him. So it feels really nice because it's not the case of, there's not a stagnation, there's not like a nostalgia of like, let's just keep playing the same music. It's younger artists who are like, I want to make new stuff with you. And that's Glenn all over. Like Glenn's not one to hang about in the past. He's very much in the present and looking to the future. So yeah, it's exciting times. I can't wait to see what comes next.
There is this really great quote that's on his website, and I was gonna go to it right now. I think I maybe mistyped it. It's like something about, it just summarizes it so well. Oh yeah, I've got it here. The pull quote at the top of his site is, I was told when I was young that I would not be successful until I was very old. Um,
Boom.
and he's living it. I mean, I don't, now that a lot of my family, like my parents' generation, are around his age, that doesn't strike me as very old. And he's such a like youthful person. But he's lived 70 something years, and that isn't young, and it's amazing to see him be entering this new phase of his career now.
Yeah, yeah. Anything's possible.
Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to get to talk with you. I am so excited for audiences to see Glenn's story as you've told it, and I'm really excited to see what story you bring to the world next.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the thoughtful questions. It's been a pleasure.
It has. Audiences watching this can tune in again. We've got a couple more Q&As in conjunction with the LGBTQIA film block that I programmed for the Alexander Valley Film Festival. We've got two really cool panels coming up tomorrow, one with the director and writer of the narrative film Tahara and the directors of the two shorts that are paired with that, XY and I Am Mackenzie. And then we've also got another Q&A, which is going to be a panel on sex workers' rights today and in the past, and that's in conjunction with the 2000 documentary Live Nude Girls Unite. So if you're watching this now, make sure to go toggle over to those if those are interesting to you and check those out coming Thursday. And everything else that's already happened for the festival, the other Q&As, if you've missed anything, are going to be on our website along with this. So if you want to come back and check it out outside of the live version, it will be there along with the films during the festival.
Thank you.
Thank you.